However, before we delve deeper into the issue of the compatibility between the doctrines discussed, we must first revisit the most important philosophical roots of anarcho-capitalism and understand how these foundational characteristics are crucial for defining the convergence that is being debated and desired. Anarcho-capitalism shares with classical anarchism the rejection of the state and political coercion, but it distinguishes itself from other strands of anarchism through its defense of private property and the free market. Anarchism, as defended by figures such as Pierre-Joseph Proudhon, Mikhail Bakunin and Peter Kropotkin, rejects the state but presents different views on how the economy should be organized. Proudhon, for example, viewed private property as fest and advocated for a form of mutualism, where productive resources would be shared cooperatively. Bakunin and Kropotkin, on the other hand, were more radical, advocating for the collectivization of the means of production and the abolition of private property. For these thinkers, true freedom could only be achieved in a society where wealth was shared equally, without the interference of a capitalist structure that perpetuated inequalities. In contrast, anarcho-capitalism sees private property not as a force of oppression, but as a fundamental right for individual freedom and economic organization. Its founder, Murray Rothbard, one of the leading theorists of anarcho-capitalism, argued that private property is the foundation for a just and free society. In The Ethics of Liberty, Rothbard argues that the morality of freedom rests on the absolute respect for individual property, for only then can individuals have the autonomy necessary to live according to their own choices. The absence of a coercive state allows individuals to interact in the free market, where voluntary exchanges benefit all parties involved. Unlike the more collectivist strands of anarchism, anarcho-capitalism proposes an economic system based on competition and private property, where the role of the market is crucial for the functioning of society. Here, the market is not only an efficient economic mechanism, but also the arena where peaceful cooperation occurs, without the distortions caused by state intervention. Competition in the market is seen as a balancing force that corrects abuses and creates spontaneous order, based on the choices and preferences of individuals, rather than a top-down imposed model. One of the most common criticisms of anarcho-capitalism by collectivist anarchists is the possibility that the free market system would perpetuate inequalities and hierarchies. However, anarcho-capitalism rejects these criticisms, arguing that without state intervention, individuals have the freedom to form voluntary associations and resolve their disputes in a peaceful and effective manner. Anarcho-capitalism rejects the use of coercive force, whether by the state or any other entity, to impose social order, believing that true justice can only be achieved through voluntary interactions between individuals. Furthermore, the defense of the free market in anarcho-capitalism aligns with an individualist view that traces back to the Enlightenment and classical liberalism, with philosophers such as John Locke defending natural rights like property and liberty, which cannot be violated by the government. Rothbard, adopting this view, argues that society can be organized justly without the need for a centralized government, where the free market, individual rights, and private property are the primary mechanisms to ensure order and prosperity. There is also the influence of Gustave de Molinari, a 19th-century Belgian economist, who is widely recognized as one of the first to defend the concept of a free market without state intervention, positioning him as a key figure in the evolution of anarcho-capitalism. Molinari was one of the leading exponents of the classical liberal school and proposed that the state, far from being a necessity, was a distortion agent in the economy. In his famous work, The Production of Security, published in 1849, Molinari argued that security, instead of being provided by the government, could be effectively provided through market competition. He suggested that, just like any other good or service, protection and justice could be better organized by private companies competing with each other in a free market to offer quality security at lower prices. This reasoning aimed to refute the traditional idea that the state monopoly on security was indispensable for the functioning of society, anticipating many ideas that would later be developed by anarcho-capitalists. While Molinari's theory focused on security, his principles extended to other aspects of social life, such as education, public services, and justice systems. He saw competition and freedom of choice as the best mechanisms for providing services, in contrast to the centralization and coercion of the state. Molinari's proposal aligns directly with anarcho-capitalist thought, where the free market and private property are the foundations of social organization. His critique of the notion of an efficient state thus anticipated the arguments of Rothbard and other anarcho-capitalist thinkers, who later took Molinari's theory and expanded it into a system of free markets where the state would be completely abolished. The libertarian anarcho-capitalist tradition owes much to a series of thinkers who, throughout history, defended the idea of a society without a coercive state organized around individualism and voluntary exchange. Among the main influences of this stream of thought are Lysander Spooner and other individualist thinkers, whose works form the basis of the critique of the legitimacy of state power and the defense of a social order based on individual liberty. Lysander Spooner, one of the most prominent individualist anarchists of the 19th century, played a crucial role in the development of the critique of the modern state. In his work No Treason, The Constitution of No Authority in 1867, Spooner argued that the U.S. Constitution lacked legitimate authority because individuals had not given their express consent to be governed by it. For Spooner, the idea that a social contract, such as the Constitution, could legitimize the power of the state was a fallacy, as true freedom could only be achieved through individual autonomy and voluntary consent. He also advocated for the abolition of laws imposed by the state, considering them a direct violation of individuals' natural rights. Spooner harshly criticized the institution of government, seeing it as a form of institutionalized violence that usurps individuals' freedom and property. His defense of the right to self-determination and private property aligns directly with the principles of anarcho-capitalism, which also rejects the idea of a centralized government and proposes the organization of society through voluntary contracts and private institutions. Additionally, Spooner believed that the judicial system, as well as security services, could be effectively provided by private companies, without the need for a coercive central authority. Other individualist thinkers also played important roles in the development of anarcho-capitalism, such as Benjamin Tucker, a philosopher and economist who advocated for a form of anarchism based on market freedom and private property. Tucker, in his work Instead of a Book in 1893, emphasized the importance of a free market system, where competition and voluntary exchange could solve social and economic problems without the intervention of a central authority. He saw the state as an institution that, contrary to what defenders of statehood argued, only perpetuated exploitation and inequality, rather than ensuring the freedom and well-being of individuals. Voluntarism, which also has deep roots in the anarchist tradition, plays an essential role in the construction of anarcho-capitalist theory. The idea that all social relationships should be based on voluntary consent is central to anarcho-capitalism, which rejects state coercion and proposes that human interactions, whether economic or social, should occur without the imposition of a higher authority. This principle of voluntary consent is especially emphasized by theorists like Murray Rothbard, who fought to synthesize the ideas of individualist anarchism with the economic theory of the Austrian school, creating the foundation for modern anarcho-capitalism. In The Ethics of Liberty in 1982, Rothbard argues that property rights are the basis of individual liberty, and that the only legitimate way to interact with others is through voluntary exchanges, where both parties involved freely consent to the transaction. Thus, any state intervention, whether through taxes, regulations, or the use of force, is considered a violation of individual freedom and property rights. Rothbard's vision also draws on thinkers like Spooner and Tucker, but goes further by integrating these principles with the free market and private property ideas of the Austrian school. These thinkers and their ideas provided the foundation for the anarcho-capitalist vision of a society where the absence of a coercive state allows for the full freedom of individuals. The critique of state power legitimacy, the defense of property rights, and the importance of voluntary exchange are elements that connect the works of these three authors, forming a robust theoretical base for anarcho-capitalism. In summary, although anarcho-capitalism differs from other anarchist strands, such as collectivist anarchism or socialist anarchism, it shares with these traditions the critique of the state and coercion. The main difference is that, while collectivist anarchism advocates for the collectivization of property, promotes the annulment of the individual, and calls for economic organization in a horizontal manner, anarcho-capitalism defends the maintenance of private property as an inalienable right, essential for individual freedom, for voluntary hierarchies or cooperation, and for the spontaneous order of the market.